I'm Shane White, and this is The Process.
Hey gang, Shane White here. Want to talk to you today about sketchbooks. What's a sketchbook and why do we use it? I know a lot of you use sketchbooks. I do as well. I try to keep them in a variety of places at close reach, and I try to keep one on my person wherever I go. It's a way to trap your ideas and work out solutions. Oftentimes I'll come up with a freelance gig that requires that I think out what that might end up being. And so I have to try to come up with thumbnails and roughs and character designs on the fly. And this is a way to sort of trap all that and make it more accessible. So when I actually do the final, I can try to keep the original energy and vigor that I had in those original sketches. It's also a place to experiment with tools and techniques. Sometimes I'll like to mix things, like a science experiment. I'll grab markers or colored pencils and some chemical of some sort, whether it's bleach or acetone or Bestine, which is a rubber cement thinner. And I'll just mess around, see what I can come up with, what kind of accidents I can have that are both interesting and creative. That way I can also apply it to a later job. It's also a growth tool. I think it's underestimated that by sketching every day or anywhere, you're growing as an artist. You're really taking the time to try things and to record your day-to-day life. Your visual vocabulary and mental library is expanding every time you sketch from life. So it can't be underestimated how much this tool will work for you. It's also a way to document your day-to-day life. Like a journal or a diary, it's a lot more interesting in the moment while you're experiencing these things, whether you're traveling or standing in line at the grocery store. You're recording your thoughts and how you feel in the moment. And that's super important because when it comes to looking back on your sketchbook, you're more likely to understand what state of mood you were in by how you drew that day. And that's what we want to try to get in our final illustrations. It's also a portable meditation device. I've often found that when I'm in a crowd, and I'm not much of an extrovert, but I also don't mind being in a crowd where I can sort of hang back and just meditate by sketching. It's an act of releasing your inner voice and you're putting pen to paper or marker to paper and just chilling out. When to use it? Now, this is one of those things that's arguable. I know with the advancements of digital technology that a lot of people are looking at their cell phones or in some cases sketching with their cell phones, which is also a great way to capture things. But really, when you're sketching in a sketchbook from life, you're observing life and you're not checked out. And that's pretty important. I use it also anytime I'm bored. So when I'm doing freelance or working on the computer, there'll be a moment when I need a break, and so I go and I grab the sketchbook. I'll throw down a few lines and make something of it, and then I'll clear my head and get back to work. It's a great way to keep the sketchbook going. You should always have one on hand, wherever and whenever. I have mine near my bed, in my car, in a backpack, by the phone, in my studio, of course, and sometimes even in the bathroom. Sketching in the shower is not that weird if you have the right tools. Also, when you're sketching from life, I find this being an artist, we don't have a lot of money, but people are free life models. Whether they're looking at their cell phone, which is interesting when I look back on my sketchbooks. A lot of my sketches are people looking down on their cell phones as of late in the past, 5 years or so. But before that, they were a lot more interesting. They would be interacting with each other, doing more. Try to find those moments and you're more likely to be able to use them later on. Also, if you really want to get close to your subjects, wear sunglasses whenever possible. It makes everybody feel a little more natural around the weirdo with the sketchbook. How to use it? Depending on your paper, paint, stamps, tape, staple, glue, draw, ink, just about anything that makes a mark. When you think about the paper quality, you really have to understand whether or not it can accept a lot of the medium. I use mine for VizDev, storyboards, comic book pages, just about anything. And again, the paper has a lot to do with it. If I'm using a heavier stock, then I know I can get a lot further along with the work. Jump around, not just the song, but seriously, jump around in your sketchbook. There's no rule on where to start in your sketchbook. I find that when a lot of artists are starting out, they get their sketchbook, they start with page 1. I never do that. And the reason why is when you do show your sketchbook to somebody, they'll start on page 1. And if you're growing as an artist at a rapid rate, especially you younger artists out there, you'll realize that you're growing almost with each page that you're drawing in. So if you hide or mask where your growth rate is by jumping around, nobody can really say, oh, page 1 is lousy, why would I keep going? You could also start backwards. You could draw on the last page and then move backwards, which is, not a bad way to go either. But I like to jump around. It makes it interesting. It's sort of a discovery, and I'm always looking for that empty page to fill. And also, don't let the sketchbook be where you stop growing as an artist. It's important that you develop your ideas and take them further. I mean, what's the point of doing them in a sketchbook if you're not going to show it in a final product? Ideas are worthless if you can't share them in their finished form. I used to have a friend of mine. She had a ton of great ideas. Her sketchbooks were filled with just a maddening amount of great ideas. And that's where they lived for years. And I was just like, oh my, you gotta get these out. They're too good to hide. So do yourself a favor. I mean, really, that's what the sketchbook is for. It's a development tool that will let you get to that next stage. There's a lot of different types of sketchbooks out there. I've purchased many different types over the years, some made by Bateman, which I really like, except the cover's kind of lousy and it usually tears off. Canson has a good line of sketchbooks, square bound, ring bound, and so forth. The paper's usually pretty good. It's all fairly consistent. I've also used Aquabee sketchbooks, usually because they can take water-based media. And they have two sides to them, like there's a rough side and a smooth side. So on the facing page, it's the rough side where I usually do watercolor, and on the other side is a smoother side, which I'll do ink work with. I usually take those when I travel overseas or wherever. But the paper itself it's just okay. It could be a lot better. But the thing about these sketchbooks is they're pretty expensive. And I would recommend really taking a long, hard look at, is it really worth the money to buy these sketchbooks when you can make them yourself? So next time, I will talk about how to make your own sketchbook with the kind of paper you want, the size you want, and there's really no limit. So stay tuned for the Art of the Sketchbook Part 2. And as always, thanks for watching.